good to have you join me on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria. The headline says U.S. Russia building troubling space anti-satellite weapon. FBI informant indicted for lying about Biden's. Israeli forces raid Gaza's main hospital. India's electoral bond ban may impact coming elections. And Venezuela expels United Nations Rights Office, gives staff days to exit. The White House has said Russia is developing a space-based anti-satellite weapon that is troubling but poses no immediate threat. John Kirby, national security spokesman, said U.S. intelligence officials had information that Russia had developed the technology, but that the weapon was not presently operational. He said U.S. officials were analyzing the information they had and consulting with allies in Europe. Kirby said on Thursday that this is not an active capability that's been deployed, and though Russia's pursuit of this particular capability is troubling, there is no immediate threat to anyone's safety. He confirmed the weapon was space-based but will not comment on reports in U.S. media that it was either nuclear-capable or nuclear-powered. Moscow modulated the U.S. claims, describing them as a malicious fabrication that were a White House ploy to try and secure the passage of multi-billion-dollar Ukrainian aid package through a resilient Republican-led House of Representatives. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said it's obvious that Washington is trying to force Congress to vote on the aid bill by hook or crook. The U.S. and the United Kingdom earlier alleged Russia had tested a space weapon in 2020. On that occasion, Moscow said the claims were propaganda. Kirby said the newest weapon could pose a fatal risk to astronauts in low orbit, along with potentially disrupting key military and civilian satellites. It will also breach the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which forbids the deployment of nuclear weapons or any other kinds of weapons of mass destruction into orbit, or to station weapons in outer space in any other manner. Over 130 countries have signed the agreement, including Russia and the U.S. Experts said the U.S. does not have the ability to counter such a weapon. Joe Biden, U.S. president, had been kept informed and had requested direct diplomatic engagement with Moscow over the weapon. The threat came to light after Mike Turner, chairman of the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee, issued a rare warning about a serious national security threat and called on Biden to declassify all information relating to this threat. Another Republican House member, Ondi Ogles, on Thursday urged House Speaker Mike Johnson to probe the effect of Turner's action may have on foreign and domestic policy, asking whether he should remain chairman. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan also briefed lawmakers. The U.S. sees Russia and China as its biggest nation-state competitors and says both are developing a range of new weapons systems, including nuclear, cyber, and space capabilities. An ex-FBI informant has been charged with lying about United States President Joe Biden and his son Hunter's connections to a Ukrainian energy firm. On Thursday, David Weiss, the special counsel leading a criminal investigation into Hunter Biden, said that a grand jury had accused Alexander Smirnov on charges of making a false statement and creating a false and fictitious record. Weiss said Smirnov, 43, was detained at Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, Nevada, after returning to the U.S. from abroad. If convicted, Smirnov could face up to 25 years in prison. Prosecutors said in the indictment filed in federal court, despite repeated admonishments that he must provide truthful information to the FBI and that he must not fabricate evidence, the defendant provided false derogatory information about the Bidens. Smirnov claimed that Hunter Biden, who sat on the board of Kyiv-based Burisma, used his father's name to solicit millions of dollars in bribes from the company. According to the indictment, Smirnov told the FBI that Burisma executive had said they employed Hunter Biden to protect us through his dad from all kinds of problems, and that they paid Hunter and Joe Biden $5 million each in 2015 and 2016. Republicans seized on Smirnov's claims to accuse the Biden family of corruption and justify a U.S. House of Representatives inquiry into President's impeachment. Then, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy cited bribery allegations made by a trusted FBI informant when he announced the impeachment inquiry into Biden last year. Lowell, Hunter Biden's lawyer, said the indictment justified months of cautions that Republicans were engaging in conspiracy theories fueled by people with political agendas. Hunter Biden, who was last year charged with tax evasion and firearms-connected charges, sat on the board of Burisma from 2014 to 2019. During some of that time, Joe Biden was vice president under former President Barack Obama. On Israel-Gaza war, Israeli special forces attacked Nasser Hospital in Gaza, the largest functioning hospital in the enclave, after laying siege to the facility for days. The Israel Defense Forces IDF said it had apprehended a number of suspects in Thursday's raid, which it said was led by intelligence gathered in part from released hostages. Israel said it deemed the bodies of dead hostages were being held inside the hospital. Hamas denies the claim, saying the group had no business at the hospital. Early on Thursday, Israeli forces bombarded the hospital, killing and wounding an undetermined number of people, according to Doctors Without Borders. Since the attack, one of their colleagues remains unaccounted for. The agency said MSF staff were forced to evacuate the hospital through a checkpoint set up by the Israeli military, adding that one employee was detained there. The news came after doctors and medical officials in southern Gaza said Israeli snipers had shot dead a number of people as they tried to flee the Nasser hospital. Eyewitnesses to the shootings, who is a trauma surgeon at the hospital, said at least 2 people were killed by snipers on Tuesday, with more shot and injured. Israeli Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said, while commenting on Thursday's raid, Hamas terrorists are likely hiding behind wounded civilians inside Nasser Hospital right now. Israeli military bulldozers dug up the mass graves inside the complex walls. Dr. Al-Qidra, spokesperson for the Ministry of Health, said earlier on Thursday the forces stormed the maternity building and conducted a surge operation inside. He added, later, Israeli forces forced hospital management staff to house closely 200 patients, 95 medical workers, 11 of their families, and 165 companions and displaced people under severe and frightening conditions, without food, without infant formula, and with extreme water shortages, according to Dr. Al-Qidra. The Indian Supreme Court verdict on Thursday dropping an opaque election funding system has set off powerful trembles in the country's politics, with transparency advocates arguing that it could expose those involved in a controversial form of political financing ahead of national elections. Opposition leaders say the judgment represents a hindrance for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, whose government presented the electoral bond scheme 7 years ago and which battled long and hard in the top courts to defend the funding mechanism. But the BJP itself has asserted that a court order will not affect its chances in the coming polls, expected between March and May, in which Modi is targeting to secure a 3rd straight term in office. Electoral bonds introduced by the BJP in 2017 led individuals and companies to donate money to political parties anonymously and without any limits. A 5-judge bench headed by Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud observed that the political contributions give a seat at the table to the contributor, and that the access also translates into influence over policy making. The Supreme Court described the scheme as unconstitutional. It also directed the state-run State Bank of India (SBI) to hold issuing the bonds, furnish identity details of those who bought them, and provide information about bonds redeemed by each political party. The information will be made public on the website of the Election Commission of India. The SBI is the only organization authorized to issue the bonds under the scheme. The release of that information, because of the court order, could give nearly 1 billion Indian voters their first look at the donors who secretly shelled out billions of dollars to political parties since 2017 and open up scrutiny of the potential benefits they secured in return. Anjali Bhardwaj, a co-convener of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, said according to reports, this judgment essentially upheld the need for transparency in the funding of political parties and reinforced that people's right to know in a democracy overrides any anonymity. Political funding is the fountainhead of corruption in India, and electoral bonds channel limitless flow of black money to political parties anonymously. Now, Venezuela has ordered the local office of the United Nations human rights body to hold operations and given its staff 72 hours to leave, accusing it of endorsing opposition to South American country. Yavan Gil, Foreign Affairs Minister, announced the decision at a news conference in the capital, Caracas, on Thursday. He said the office, the local technical advisory office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, had been used by the international community to maintain a discourse against Venezuela. The step came 2 days after the United Nations agency expressed deep concern over the detention of rights activist Horacio San Miguel and called for her immediate release. Gill said the United Nations Rights Office had taken on an inappropriate role and had become the private law firm of the coup plotters and terrorists who permanently collude against the country. He said the decision will remain in place until the agency publicly corrects before the international community their colonialist, abusive and violating attitude of the United Nations Charter. Venezuela's government said in a statement it decided to suspend the activities of the UN Rights Office and carry out a holistic revision of the technical cooperation terms. It said the review would take place over the next 30 days. It was not instantly clear if the Venezuelan government had notified the United Nations directly of its order to close the office. United Nations spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said during his daily briefing on Thursday that he had just been made aware of the decision and will get back to members of the press. The United Nations Human Rights Office has operated in Venezuela since 2019. On more stories on economy, United Kingdom in recession with worst GDP in years. Official figures showed on Thursday the United Kingdom has fallen into recession just months ahead of a general election, derailing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's promise to generate economic growth. Gross domestic product GDP fell 0.3% in the final 3 months of 2023, following a 0.1% contraction in the July to September period, the Office of the National Statistics said. A recession is generally defined as 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. ONS Director of Economic Statistics Liz McKeown said in a statement that all the main sectors fell on the quarter, with manufacturing, construction and wholesale being the biggest drags on growth, partially offset by increases in hotels and rentals of vehicles and machinery. The ONS estimates that UK GDP increased by a meager of 0.1% in 2023. That's the worst performance since 2009, when the economy was still reeling from the global financial crisis. If 2020, which was affected by the pandemic, is excluded, last year's weak rise in output follows growth of 4.3% in 2022. The news will come as a disappointment to Sunak, whose ruling Conservative Party is contesting 2 local elections in England on Thursday. It could also broaden the already commanding lead the opposition Labour Party enjoys in opinion polls ahead of the national election anticipation this year. Suren Thiru, Economics Director at the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, said, though the shallowness of this recession provides comfort, these figures also confirm that our economy remained locked in a circle of persistent stagnation throughout 2023. The data also provides an undesirable backdrop for the government's yearly budget announcement next month. UK Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt is broadly anticipated to reveal moderate cuts to some taxes despite the anemic economy and sky-high government debt levels. On Thursday, Hunt said that low growth was to be likely due to high interest rates, which the Bank of England has taken to levels not seen in 26 years in order to tackle inflation. But there are signs the British economy is turning a corner. Although times are still tough for many families, we must stick to the plan, cutting taxes on work and business to build a stronger economy, Hunt added in a statement. In Senegal, February 25th election delay deemed unlawful. On Thursday, Senegal's top election authority annulled the government's rescheduling of a presidential election scheduled for February 25th and its postponement to December, ruling that the changes were unconstitutional. According to a judgment approved by 7 members of the body, according to reports said, Senegal's Constitutional Council cancelled the decree signed by President Macky Sall that shifted the election. The National Assembly's decision of February 5th to reschedule the vote for December 15th also was contrary to the Constitution, the judgment said. The Constitutional Council, noting the impossibility of organizing the presidential poll on the date initially planned, invites the capability authorities to hold it as soon as possible, it added. The postponement has thrown the country into political chaos, and it was not instantly clear if the election could go forward as originally planned or whether more time will be required to allow for political campaigns. Sall said Sall did not instantly make any public comments in response to the ruling. The Senegalese leader had postponed the election hours before campaigns were to begin, citing a dispute between the judiciary and the legislature over the final list of candidates as well as the reported dual nationality of some of the candidates. The postponement was rejected by opposition leaders who led a protest against it, resulting in violent clashes with security forces, arrests and mobile internet cuts that further heightened political tensions in one of Africa's most stable democracies. Unlike earlier years, this year's election has been dogged by controversies from deadly protests that resulted in Sall pronouncing that he will not seek a third term through the disqualification of 2 opposition leaders. The opposition accused Sall of planning to hold on to power beyond the constitutionally permitted limit, though the Senegalese leader denied this. He said, according to reports, that he postponed the vote to stop the country from plunging into major difficulties over the electoral dispute. Still ahead, wars block into disintegration key at AU summit. The Executive Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the African Union was held in Addis Ababa from Wednesday to Thursday. The Council of Ministers coordinates and takes decisions on policies in areas of common interest to member states. The reappearance of military coups, pre- and post-election violence, humanitarian crunches connected to war and the effects of climate change were emphasized. Moussa Faki Mahamat, AU Commission Chair, reckoned that they pose a serious threat to smear the signs of the emergence of the Africa of which we are proud. Comoros Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation and Chair of the Executive Council also underlined terrorism, violent extremism, and unconstitutional changes of government as a challenge to the democratic processes on the continent. Dohir Dukamal said, "We have spared no effort to find a lasting solution to the various crises that are currently affecting the continent." In Cairo, Addis Ababa and Djibouti, the war in Sudan has mobilized energies to bring the positions of the warring parties closer together. The developing cracks on regional disintegration was deliberated in the 2-day ministerial session. Faki sounded the alarm on a new phenomenon on collapse of institutions of regional and continental governance. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger jointly announced their immediate withdrawal from the Economic Community of West African States on January 28th. Formally, though, the ECOWAS Treaty provides that its member states who wish to quit the bloc shall give its leadership a 1-year written notice, at the end of which such a state shall cease to be a member of the community. Faki says the phenomenon is affecting almost all regional economic communities. Blocs in chaos include the East African Community, in which Burundi and Rwanda are once again in a standoff. As the war in eastern DRC continues to displace thousands of Congolese, the Democratic Republic of Congo maintains the M23 rebel group, one of the most active in the region, is sponsored by Kigali. Rwanda has continually denied these accusations. Now we take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now on stories from Nigeria. Tinubu governors lean towards state police as insecurity continues to plague different parts of Nigeria. The federal government seems to have finally come around to the idea of having state police. At a meeting with 36 state governors joined by Vice President Kashim Shettima, the National Security Advisor NSA, the Inspector General of Police IGP, the Director General of the Directorate of State Service DSS, and some ministers at the State House in Abuja yesterday, it approved the formation of a committee to start the groundwork for the creation of state police. President Bola Tinubu, in a statement by presidential spokesman Ajuri Ngalali, approved the creation of a committee comprising state governors and representatives of the federal government to, among other things, explore the modalities for the establishment of state police. He further endorsed the training and equipping of forest rangers by sub-national government to safeguard human and natural resources in local communities. According to reports following the apparent intractable security challenges across Nigeria, especially terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, rustling, and communal violence, there have been rising calls for decentralization of the policing structure in the country, most recently by the governor of the major opposition, People's Democratic Party, PDP. This is as the president said his administration was developing homegrown solutions to tackle the nation's food security challenges by setting up schemes to support local production and discourage all forms of rent-seeking associated with food importation. The president also spoke of the need to look into the implementation of livestock development and management plans, including dairy farming. He also urged the governors to trust the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, with the management of the country's monetary policy, stressing the significance of letting designated institutions to fulfill their mandate effectively. President Tinubu further asked the governors to always make the welfare and prosperity of the people a priority of their development programs, assuring them that the federal government will continue to work diligently to improve the nation's revenue profile. At the meeting, the president and the governors emphasized the importance of working together to tackle issues of insecurity, food security, and out-of-school children. And finally, on the news on petroleum matters, tanker drivers threatened to hold petrol loading on Monday. Nigeria may experience another round of fuel scarcity as the Nigerian Association of Road Transport Owners on Thursday promised to stop lifting petroleum products beginning from next week Monday due to the high cost of operations. NARTO members have continually raised concern over the high cost of diesel needed to power their trucks for the transportation of petroleum products across the country. On Thursday, oil marketers said diesel prices between 1,250 naira to 1,400 naira per litre, depending on the area of purchase. Yusuf Othman, NATO's president, in a statement he issued in Abuja on Thursday, said the statement was an official announcement from the association's headquarters that members of the group will pack their trucks from Monday. Othman said NATO members had been operating at a loss and it was no longer sustainable for them to bear the losses. He said NATO's efforts to get the intervention of major stakeholders, the federal government, and industry operators had not yielded positive results. The NATO president said the association had written letters on the unbearable cost of operations to the Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, Minister of Petroleum Resources, Department of State Services, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Regulatory Authority, Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, and oil marketers. He stressed that despite the letters, there has been no response. Analyzing the market situation, which the members have endured for many months, he stated that the same cargo rates that applied when former President Muhammadu Buhari was in ruling was still in existence. A recap of major stories says U.S. says Russia building troubling space anti-satellite weapon. FBI informant indicted for lying about Biden's. Israeli forces raid Gaza's main hospital. India's electoral bond ban may impact coming elections. And Venezuela expels United Nations Rights Office, gives staff days to exit. That's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. I am Lois Tureki.